We started to develop what was called the advanced video system, which was the predecessor to the NES. It had a music keyboard, it had a QWERTY keyboard, a tape drive, zapper type gun, controller, and used cartridges. And we introduced that at CES, and a lot of the retailers came back and said it was too expensive. And so we came back, and myself and another designer were given about an hour to change the design to the current NES system, and that eventually became the Nintendo Entertainment System, which launched in 1985.
Nintendo has a long history of bringing innovation to the marketplace and then seeing that spread throughout the industry. If you look at the D-pad and the XY buttons, right? Said another way, systems before the original Nintendo Entertainment System, if you look at the input devices, they were fairly crude. We added a range of functionality that then allowed new types of games to be played.
Oh, Duck Hunt! How could I forget Duck Hunt? That was on the first NES, which came with a gun. Probably wouldn't happen today.
So that went on for a long time, and then of course the Nintendo came along, and as a player, everybody thought, you got to be kidding me, we're past that, aren't we? And boom, here they come, and as usual, software sells hardware, and Mario Brothers was great, and Zelda was great, and so I put a lot of hours as a player into those early Nintendo games. I love those early Nintendo games.
Nintendo really entered the US market around late 79, 1980. And they originally went to New York for a period of time with a game called Radar Scope. It took a long time to get games from Japan around the bottom of South America to New York. And so the company in 1981 moved back to what we called South Center, which is down by SeaTac Airport. And the original company, there were 5 people in it. I was the second person hired. And I remember we had a game got shipped over to us, and they had asked what character, or the main character was called Jumpman, and they asked us, what do you want to call the character in the United States? And the current president and myself were standing there looking at it, and we thought it would be really funny to name him Mario, after our landlord, Mario Segali, who was kind of a recluse. And so that's what we sent to Japan. That's how Mario got his name.
The first video game I ever played was on the original Nintendo system, and it was Mario Brothers, on the Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt double disc cartridge. I was passionate about video games right from the beginning. I became obsessed with the Nintendo the second that we got it. My brother and I got it for Christmas one year, and we were both really into it, but I quickly took over as far as like being passionate and enthusiastic about the games. And then even all of that changed for me when I subscribed to Nintendo Power, and it was from the very first episode or issue of Nintendo Power. You got to choose a gift, and your gift could, I don't remember what the other gift was, but my gift was the game Dragon Warrior, because who wouldn't want a game called Dragon Warrior? And I got that game, and it totally changed my life. From that moment on, I was obsessed with RPG games, obsessed with dragons, obsessed with anything fantasy based, and I had to play them all.
So when I was about 12 years old, I was so hooked on Nintendo that my friends at school called me Nintendo Boy, and people I didn't even like called me Nintendo Boy. It was a compliment and an insult. I loved playing games as much as I could.
See, the first game I ever played, or can remember playing, I think was the original Super Mario Brothers for Nintendo. It was, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 years old or something. Played it at a friend's house, and just, I thought it was great that you could control this character and run and play and jump and do all this stuff, and it was challenging. You kept on dying, but you kept on wanting to come back to it. It was the great mix of challenge that you knew you could do better the next time, and I just loved that with Mario and kept on playing. Eventually got a system myself and all sorts of other games to play, but originally it was at a friend's house playing original Mario.
The first video game I remember playing was Pong, but then my most memorable was when I started playing Super Mario. I remember my dad bought us a Nintendo, and we came up with Super Mario with a Duck Hunt combo, and it was unforgettable. It was something.
I do like Nintendo. It has a special place in my heart. I had an NES when I was, I think 10. I was the first kid on my block to have one. So playing Super Mario Brothers and Tetris for years on end. The game I wasted most of my life on was Ghosts and Goblins. I never beat it. I got to the end of the tower. I think I was like 14. Killed me. Died in my underwear.
I'd say Nintendo for nostalgia reasons, and I used to work for them as well, so I just have a lot of good memories tied around Nintendo. So it's personal for me, but they also make a lot of great games and wonderful characters that are timeless. They keep fans around for decades, and so I think they're pushing a good product.
They were cool consoles, and then moving forward, sort of as you got into the Nintendo era, and I remember seeing Super Mario Brothers for the first time and just being completely blown away. It was like, wow, there's an arcade in my house. This is the coolest thing ever.
Well, I can tell you that playing the system and the games was really fun. And in my career at Nintendo, I always been fortunate that I get to see this stuff before anybody else does, except of course for the people who are making it in Japan. And usually you can tell fairly quickly if you're really interested in it. And so when the system first came out, I started playing a bunch of the games, the launch titles, and you'd stay up all night playing the thing. And I thought, this is really fun. This is going to be, I hope, everyone in the country is going to have as much fun doing it as I did.
I was into Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo. I didn't actually have Nintendo at my house. My mom wouldn't let me. And my grandfather bought a Nintendo and kept it at his house at the farm. So I would go and I would actually play with my grandfather, and he just absolutely loved that game. It was a really unique way of us bonding together because it was silly to watch him play, because he would sit there and every time he pressed the jump button, he would go like this in his chair. And so I'd always be laughing at him and laughing with him, and it made that game so much more significant to me, and it showed me what games can do, where they can bring people together, even when it's something single player like that. I think that's definitely how I fell in love with video games, was playing Super Mario Brothers, the original, on Nintendo with my grandfather.
I actually broke my first Nintendo. I was angry while playing Mega Man, and I picked up my Nintendo and smashed it on the floor, and my parents never got me another Nintendo.
So I started with an Atari 2600 that has been my parents', and I started playing on that, and then I very clearly remember when I was 8 years old, my parents gave my brother and I a Nintendo, the original Nintendo, for Christmas. And the very first game I got was DuckTales, and that's the very first game I ever beat on the Nintendo. And then, of course, from that point on, my brother and I just continually wanted more video games in our life. So we got the Super Nintendo, we got the Nintendo 64, we got the GameCube. I think that's right about when I started leaving for college, so I didn't really get my hands on the GameCube as much as my brother did. But then in college was when we, everyone kind of brought up their old Super Nintendos and stuff like that, and we played GoldenEye and all that kind of stuff.
But no, I mean, that Atari 2600 started my journey, and I was an Atari fan all the way up until the 7800. But then, the NES came out, and that was clearly the system to own.
I think that one of the reasons we get nostalgic about things is it's not necessarily the thing that we were doing. It's not that song. It's not that game or that movie or that book. It's what was happening in your life at that time. And the Nintendo Entertainment System entered my life right as I had sort of crested the wave of Stand By Me and had begun working on Star Trek: The Next Generation. And it was a wonderful, joyous, incredible time of my life. And the NES then was an amazing, amazing game system.
Shigeru Miyamoto was absolutely a genius who helped Nintendo become what it was with Mario and the Mario games and Legend of Zelda games and many more. So this was the thing that changed the industry. To me, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of many people, the Nintendo Entertainment System revitalized the game industry and brought it back to its feet.
Yeah, I remember when NES came out and it had the robot, which I never could figure out what I was supposed to do with the robot. It looked really cool, but I never really figured out how to incorporate it. But I was totally addicted to that.
Well, I started working on Attack of the Show because I played video games. It's no joke. I never hosted a day before in my life before working on that show, and I happened to be bartending one night, and a guy who worked in development came in, sat at my bar, and we started chatting, and I was wearing an old school Nintendo remote control necklace, and he asked me about it, and I was like, oh, I've played video games since I was 5, and he was like, but you're a girl. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
And then, of course, the Nintendo Entertainment System was, I think, a big landmark system, because before that, there was a big question mark about whether or not video games were going to be able to stay popular. There's the big video game crash, and then Nintendo showed us how we can bring them back and make them really popular again.